Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome back. Welcome back to PorscheCooled. Steve, is that you?
No. Yes.
Hello, Steve.
Hello, Michael.
And
Hello, Marco.
Marco. Hello, Marco.
Oh, sorry. Hey, mates. Better?
Hello.
So some say it would never happen, but it's happened. We're actually doing a three-way. Who would have thought?
Don't expect much.
Who would have thought? Steve is here. Marco twisted his arm. I don't know what's happened overnight, but somehow we managed to pull this together last minute. As I said before, I'm not promising Friday episodes of this podcast because there's way too much work at the moment. But it's another Friday's episode. It's here. We're doing it now. So anything else?
Who's on top?
You're on top at the moment. I can see you on the screen.
Cool. I'm the lightest.
All right, let's get into it. This is a bit weird. This is a little bit weird because we haven't done a three-way conversation, and it's hard to sort of work out who's talking and who's not talking. We'll try our best, and we'll keep going. So I'm going to start.
We've got a secret signal if we talk over the top of each other. So if you hear like a screaming banshee noise, you'll understand what's going on.
You know, I've had a lot of messages about Steve not being here. A lot of people miss you, Steve.
I don't believe you.
Okay, let's get straight into it. I just want to cover a couple of things that I forgot last week because Marco and I were so excited about talking on the podcast together. I forgot to read out important things. And the first thing I forgot to read out, I forgot to read out the Apple reviews. And I'm going to start with that. And it's a very weird thing for me to start with, but I'm going to start with that today while Marco and Steve start working out what they're going to talk about. We have 2 Apple reviews since I shut down everything, and I forgot to read them out, like I said. So, PorscheCooled is loved. I have listened to the PorscheCooled podcast and will remain a subscriber with that hope that Michael and Steve will return for an encore. Michael, I hope you find your 912, and Steve finds the perfect 997 GT3 exhaust. That's from Jeff in Sydney. We all know who Jeff is. Jeff's got the beautiful 912 that he just had resprayed.
Is that Jeff? What's he? Acuna Bay Jeff?
Acuna Bay Jeff, yeah. So you saw that,
okay. Cool.
You saw the, who sent it to me? Miff sent it to me, actually, from Sydney. Miff sent me the picture of Jeff's car at the Auto House Cars and Coffee. Were you guys there?
Mm-hmm. Negative.
Why didn't you go?
Marco?
I was washing my hair.
Okay.
He's got plentiful, bountiful hair.
It didn't work. It
didn't work?
No, I'm going to be honest. We opted to drive instead of look at cars and mingle.
Fair enough. Second one, let me just finish this one and we'll get into it. Really good podcast. I just recently came across this podcast and I'm making my way through the older episodes. Michael and Steve are very knowledgeable about all things Porsche and have great chats about driving and upgrading their cars. The owner stories episodes are really cool. It's very interesting to hear about how people got into cars and why they bought their Porsche. That's from Obear1. That's from Tom. Tom's coming up on owner stories. I've recorded Tom's story already, and it's a good one. And Tom's from Canada, so he'll be in a future owner story in a couple of weeks. I think it is a couple of weeks. So, did you know that there is a purpose of crypto in the world, Steve, Marco?
To buy cars?
To buy cars. So, you know, like in London, I've noticed a lot of dealers take crypto. And I know what you said, Steve, it fluctuates so much. How do they work it out? I don't know. They seem to do it through BitPay. But the thing I found online just before I came on with you guys is that you can actually buy a Porsche now with crypto. A Porsche dealer in the US is actually taking crypto as payment. I think it might be the first one. That's why they made such a big deal about it. So you can buy your 911 or your Taycan or your Macan with crypto. Would you do that, Steve?
I think Mark and I were having this chat with you about, I think he and I are sort of relatively on the same page in terms of being just completely naive to crypto. Like, I don't really get how it works. I sort of understand the basic principle of it, but my main thing about that is like, because doesn't like the price of it, like an exchange rate, doesn't it fluctuate so wildly that at any given time, you know, like if you kind of went, hey, this car is worth $250,000, doesn't that equivalent crypto $2.5 million sort of change so wildly that, you know, like, how do you actually kind of set that, like the equivalent crypto amount?
I guess it's at that point in time, isn't it? I mean, it's at that point in time. So when the coins are transferred from your wallet to the dealer's wallet, it's at that point in time. So they obviously have the US value of the car. I mean, the guy on YouTube, Carl, I can't remember his last name. He has a crypto channel. I think it's called Carl the Moon or something. He's only like 24. Some people might have heard of him before. He's on, like I said, he's on YouTube. He bought a Bugatti with crypto, with Ethereum.
I hate him already.
And he bought a GT3 RS. He lives in Dubai. He's Swedish, I think. Made his way up from working in a supermarket. And he bought a GT3 RS black, gold wheels as well. But they told him what the price was. I think from the video when I watched it, the price was in US dollars, whatever it was, 120,000 US or whatever, 130,000 US, or AED if you're in Dubai, whatever the money was. And then I guess in that point in time when they transfer the Ethereum, it's what the price of Ethereum is at that point in time. So therefore the dealer, if they take the money in Ethereum and Ethereum drops 20% straight away, well, then they lost 20%. But if they're not going to sell the Ethereum, and that's not the purpose, and the purpose is long-term and they just hold on to it, I guess it's not a problem. And also you can earn money from it as well. You can earn return from your Ethereum and make reasonably good interest on crypto, like 7%, 8%, 7%.
Yeah, this is why I was I was asking questions about it, because it would I won't try and get my head around it, but it would make sense if they were accepting it at a lower rate, if that makes sense. That
Probably,
to me would be worth their while of doing, in dealing with crypto. And I don't know. I don't get it. But if Porsche is stepping up to it, then I'd say there'd be a few following.
Well, I don't know. It was a Porsche dealer I kept the article somewhere. It was a Porsche dealer in the US. I'm not sure what state it was. In the US, in Baltimore, actually. A Porsche dealer in Baltimore. So official Porsche dealer as well. Not because when I first saw the article, I thought it was just like a, prestige dealer or something, but it's actually an official Porsche dealer. So I guess Porsche is okay with that. If you're a dealer, you have to sort of abide by their rules, right? So they must be okay. So I'm guessing it's going to happen all the way through. Anyway, I thought that was interesting seeing that anyway. Hey, have you guys listened to Owner Stories? Have you listened to Amanda's story?
No, I haven't.
God, what? Steve?
I haven't yet.
No.
I just woke up.
You just woke up?
No.
I haven't slept in like 4 days, so I don't think we're recording on a Wednesday morning. I don't think it kind of came up in my feed yet anyway.
Just so the listeners know, we're actually recording this. I'm in London. It's 12:37 a.m. I feel like I'm doing late night radio. It's 12:37 a.m. I feel like I should be playing some slow move Eagles or something. I don't know. Feels like that. Owner Stories.
Question, Michael.
Yes.
You got to put your hand up.
Do you take Banshee or hand up? Do you take crypto for your Patreon?
Patreon doesn't take crypto. I'll take crypto from anyone if they want to give it to me. I don't have a problem taking it.
Okay.
What's one crypto worth?
What is a crypto?
I don't know.
Which one?
Ethereum.
Ethereum at the moment
Roughly.
is 2,700 US. It's dropped. It was about 3,000. It's about 2,700 US at the moment. I only know it in US. Sorry, I keep track of it all in US. So PorscheCooled Owner Stories this week. Amanda, number 72 of the Owner Story series. Like I said, the whole point of starting this podcast up again was because I had a lot of people who still wanted to be on Owner Stories. Amanda reached out to me, or I reached out to, I can't remember actually, before I stopped the podcast, and then I couldn't put her on because I wasn't doing any more episodes. Amanda's got a good story. She's from Colorado in the US, arctic.metro on Insta, and the YouTube channel is also Arctic Metro. Amanda's story, guys, is really, really good. She's got a 02 Carrera 4 cab, 996, manual. Her and her husband had a 07 997 turbo, black, manual, almost fully loaded car, carbon. She said the carbon was going a bit brown, actually. It was sort of changing color, some of the carbon inside the 997. It wasn't holding up that well.
Yep.
Sold the turbo for the Spider, but only sold the turbo once they had the allocation for the Spider because they ordered it from Porsche, Colorado. And Amanda's got the Shark Blue. She optioned it in Shark Blue, lightweight buckets. Very, very cool, Steve. Marco, very, very cool. Have a look at her Instagram anyway. It's arctic.metro. And that is PorscheCooled Owner Stories this week. So make sure you go and give Amanda a follow. I'm not going to give too much away. I always say it, but I'm actually not going to give too much away today. But it's a really good story. And Amanda takes really good photos of her Spider. Her Spider and also Pig's Porsche, Ben at Pig's Porsche. They take really good photos. Both have Spiders, different generations, but both have Spiders. Very, very cool.
She does. I jumped on her Instagram. Very good pics.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Really
and she
good.
drives the cars. You know what was funny? I'll tell you a funny bit of it, actually. They had, like, sensible cars. Like, she had, they had sort of sensible cars, BMWs, sensible sort of performance cars. When they got into the German cars, then they sold, her X3 M40i, and her husband had a 3 Series, something, one of the M Series, 3 Series, I can't remember what it was called. And they sold them both together, and they just had 2 911s in their garage in Colorado. So they put snow tires on the car, and they were using it basically as their daily cars. So it's very, very cool.
It's supposed to be really good in snow, aren't they? Porsches have traditionally been brilliant in sort of crap weather.
Yeah.
All that rear end traction and stuff like that.
Exactly. The weight over the rear wheels helps.
There was that really good Volkswagen. There's a really old DDB ad for Beetles, like back in the 60s. And it showed a car stranded, footprints, and then it led to a Beetle.
Okay.
Because obviously, because it's air-cooled plus engine over the back, and it wasn't sort of stranded. I can't remember the headline, but it was making that point of obviously just sort of how bulletproof and how it was something like, what does the guy that plows a snow drive or something like that.
Really, right. Really I've seen that, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I really like what Jeff Swart said, actually. Jeff Swart has got the life. He's had the life. Still having the life.
Still, he's not dead yet.
He's got the life. But I was listening to him on Smoking Tire. Did you listen to him when he was on Smoking Tire?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool how he said, he's always had Porsches in his life because his father had a 356. And when his father had the 356, it was just the family car. It was just the car they drove. It wasn't anything special. It, got dirty or whatever. And I just did an owner stories with Greg, who's coming up. And his 356, he's got the photos of it before he owned it. He's the third owner. And it's got the photos in, whatever year it was. And it's just in the driveway of someone's house. And it's just covered in dirt. And it's just, driven and just not a special thing. You know what I mean? And there's something nice about that, about Porsches, how they were just that sort of car, and how now they've just become this unobtainable, almost, craziness. You know what I mean? Yeah,
it's something that it's just so precious that you can't sort of touch it and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I kind of agree. Like, I used to work with a German lady who got in the back of my old 964 once. Like, I was working in an advertising agency, and she sort of loved it so much because she sort of said, I grew up in one of these, and, went down the Autobahn, and I can remember the smell and the sounds and all of that sort of stuff.
Really?
I don't know. It'd be nice if, our kids kind of had those sorts of memories, except my car doesn't have back seats, but it sort of feels a bit more like a Porsche is a precious sort of thing that you don't necessarily kind of grow up in and kind of go and take family holidays and stuff. These days, it's more like a cars and coffee type thing, I guess. But was that your decision, Marco, to buy the turbo, because it has back seats and you can take your daughters in the car?
Not at all.
Not at all. Right in the back?
No. Yes, I have. Yeah. Once, and it's okay for short distances. It's not too bad, short trips. Yeah. But no, not at all. To add to the whole 356, as I mentioned in the last pod, Michael, the romance of driving something like a 356. Back then they were just the family car. They were the car that you use. But to actually have one now and do the same, that's uber cool. I'd love to be able to do that. And obviously take care of it, but it's kind of hard when it's a nice shiny car and all you do is take it out to Cars and Coffee and just stress about it. It's nice when you can just relax, get in it. go to
It
Coles,
is.
go to your Cars and Coffee, do whatever you like and really enjoy
Strap
it,
a
and,
canoe
and drop
to
the
it.
kids off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Go camping in it.
Exactly. And that's why Jeff Swart, I mean, obviously he's got a lot of cars, right? He's got a lot of special Porsches. But the fact that he just takes that 356, you know, they take it out with a canoe, like Steve just said. You know, his 914, you know, he just had it since he bought it new in the 70s. You know what I mean? He just drives it. The other guy on Instagram, is it Mark Preambic or Mark Preambic? He's got the greeny sort of shade 356 that just drives it and it's got patina. You know that guy?
Nope.
I don't know him.
I think it's Mark Preambic or something like that. He does the same thing. He just drives it and enjoys it. You know what I mean? And that's why I said, you know, even like what PJ's doing with his PJ in the UK. He was on his stories before with his 356A, how he's like fixing, you know, sort of outlawing it a bit and doing stuff at Flat Six Jack. I think it's great as long as you drive these cars. But like you said, you drive it to Cars and Coffee, and you're worried that the GT3 RS that's going to park next to you is going to slam their door into your side. That's kind of how it is, isn't it? Which is, you know, I don't know.
Actually, I'll throw one Instagram handle in there at Hummel, HUMMEL. And he's got two of them now. He's got a Speedster and a hardtop, and he does exactly that. He just gets in, enjoys them, really good vids, and pics on his Instagram as well. So check him out.
Yeah, it's a good Instagram, actually. I've seen that one. I have actually shared some of his images. It's a great Instagram. Let me just go back to the usual. Let me just get this out of the way and we'll get into the conversation. Patreon. I just want to say thank you. Last week I might have come across a little bit like a arse, but I wasn't trying to be an arse. And I made the point that a lot of people have dropped out of Patreon. A lot of people have re-signed up to Patreon, so I really appreciate it. And there's also 2 new members. So I think we've had 6... It tells me I've had 6 new members of Patreon, but I know that 4 of them are people who have been a member before. And I'm just going to mention your names really, really quickly. Tyler, thank you. Matt, thank you. Stephen from Sydney. We all know Stephen. Thank you. And Lloyd today as well. And then 2 new members, Brian and Andrew. So thank you so much for joining PorscheCooled. If you want to support the podcast for as long as it's here, you can go to patreon.com. Someone asked me the other day, I was recording, they didn't know how to do it. Patreon.com, search PorscheCooled, or just go patreon.com/PorscheCooled. Where are we? Steve and Marco. Do you want to start with a recommendation?
Sure.
Have you got one? Who wants to go first, Steve or Marco?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay.
This is coming across a bit stilted, so let's just keep rolling.
Yeah, I know, a little bit.
It's because there's 3 of us, so we're kind of hesitant to talk over the top of each other and make banshee noises, but it's cool. We'll get the hang of it. We were talking before about, I think I shared it with you guys, the Sam Moore's podcast. He did one recently where he got Jonathan Benson in from Tire Reviews.
Right.
And I bet you didn't sort of watch it, listen to it, but if you're into tires, like that Jonathan Benson guy is pretty cool. Like, he's got his own YouTube channel. So like, I'm recommending that particular podcast because like the banter between them, and it's kind of interesting. He just sort of explains how he tests tires and all of that sort of stuff. Like he's, you know, very proper with it. But then he's got his own sort of YouTube channel. So if you could be bothered, kind of go and watch that as well. But, you know, he sort of talks about like the difference between like an N-rated tire or, you know, like on a BMW, it's star-rated versus a star-rated PS4S versus a PS4 and, you know, all of that type of thing. So I find like if you are in that sort of position where you're looking for tires and stuff like that, I reckon that's a pretty good source to kind of get what seems like fairly independent kind of opinions on it.
What's his name again, Steve?
Jonathan Benson. It's tirereviews.com.
Tirereviews.com. Well,
or Tire Reviews on YouTube. His YouTube channel is pretty good in English. And look, the interesting thing is, I'll give away one little bit. Like everybody, including myself, bangs on about PS4S as being sort of like the best, the Michelin to kind of put on your Porsche. And he kind of goes, they're a really great tire, nothing wrong with it. But he actually thinks, I think he kind of opted for a Conti, Sport Conti 5 or 6, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Yeah, like I don't know, just interesting if you're into kind of tire stuff.
Yeah,
Cool.
back to that podcast though. Sam Moores, isn't it? I always get confused.
Moores.
Sam Moores.
Yep.
I like his podcast. I do listen to him, and I have got that on my
good.
saved things to listen when I go for my run walks. I find his podcast. I find sometimes I can't listen to it because it's all a bit slow and it doesn't keep me moving. You know what I mean?
You mean
I started listening to another podcast, and it's not automotive. Sorry, Mark, I'll let you go in a sec. It's not automotive, and it's not my recommendation. It's not automotive. It's called Lex Friedman podcast. Have you heard of Lex Friedman? Or Friedman?
No.
I've been listening to a couple of his. They're kind of a bit different, but if you want something different to listen to, I mean, he's done a few on crypto and stuff as well, but I've actually listened to him, so I thought that was quite good. Marco, what have you got? What do you recommend this week?
Okay. I don't know how I stumbled across this guy. Might have been on Instagram. I'll start off with his name, Ricardo Fine Car Artwork. Have either of you heard of him or seen his work?
Funny that you should say that. I've got a secret for you, Marco, which I'll tell you about later.
What is it called?
Okay.
Ricardo what?
Ricardo Fine
Artwork.
Car, Fine Artwork or Fine Car Artwork.
Right.
He goes under. And let me just say that when I found him, I bought quite a few prints. He's a very talented guy, numbered prints, but gee whiz, he put some good artwork up. His Instagram's quite good as well. He's got some little short videos of artwork that's coming up and how he puts other things together. He's a really talented guy. He's over in Portugal. Postage and packing and everything is great. Faultless.
You got it yet?
Really, really good. Have I got them?
Yeah,
I've got. Yes, I've got 4 of
So
them.
they're all Porsche related or just car related?
No, just F1. You get vintage sort of stuff. You get a fair bit of Porsche in there as well. Rally. There's all
Lots of
sorts
rally
of
stuff. His rally stuff's good.
Yeah.
And what does he charge a poster?
Oh, gee, good question. It was a little while ago. I think they're at about 60 or 70 euro, I think.
Okay, so not cheap. Not cheap.
No, but well worth it. Well worth it. Really, really good artwork. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the website? What's the website?
Ricardo Fine Artwork.
Okay, so that's 2. I didn't really have a recommendation, so I was a little bit lazy. I'm going to recommend an article that I sent to Marco and Steve today, I think. An article that I came across last night in my dire search of finding out more and more information about 993s, which I should just ask Steve, but he's been busy. And I came across this a guy's link on 911 UK forum that had all this stuff on 993s, and in the mass of all the documents was an article from the Porsche Panorama magazine in December 2004, The Art of Driving by Rick By. And this article, I thought it was quite a good article, and I'm not going to give it away. If anyone wants a link, I can. I'll give you the link. I'll put the link in the description of this podcast, actually, of the guy's post on that forum, and you can get it yourself. But Rick By is a professional driver, right? He's a 30-year-old veteran of professional motorsports. He's Canadian, I think, and he has all levels of racing as a driver. I thought it was quite interesting because he talks a lot about, I think it was, people were talking about this article because it's about Tiptronics, people who own Tiptronics in 993, Steve, saying that the Tiptronics were just as good as the manual. And the Tiptronics have those 5, and the Tiptronics have the 5 levels. And something about if it's on a track, there's a video, and I can't remember where I saw the video, and I saw it last night. I didn't save it. A video where the guy's on the track in a 993 Tiptronic, and he's just flooring it. And because he's on the track and because he's in that really high rev range, the mapping of the Tiptronic is at its best. You know what I mean? So they're showing how good this Tiptronic could be. And they're saying when you're on the road, and he talks about it in that article, he talks about driving as well, but he talks about that side of it, Marco, as well. But that if you get it, you just got to, something you have to do with the throttle or whatever to get it into this mapping so it's not in the sluggish mode. Because when it's in the sluggish mode, it really is shit. It's not good at all.
It does feel sluggish, yeah, because Marco's father-in-law, my uncle, had pretty much the identical 993 to me. I had a manual and he had a Tiptronic, and whenever I jumped into his car, I just sort of found it really slushy and lazy kind of thing.
But
I mean, not that I ever fanged the thing. Yeah, I was about to say, I never really fanged it kind of thing, but it just didn't, sort of lost all the kind of urgency and immediacy in it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michael, go on.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I do remember him saying very similar things in that the car does adapt to the driver. And, the whole kick down thing, I toyed around with all that sort of stuff, but I don't know. I was sort of, it's all, I mean, you can make it work, but don't know. I'm a manual guy all the way. It is sluggish. It does feel sluggish, but yeah, I think reading his article on a track, obviously it'd be very different. You can really play around with it. And he did mention that it took him 2 or 3 laps.
Laps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Teaching the car how to sort of perform, and he wasn't even using the Tiptronic mode. That was purely in drive. So
yeah. There's that video I watched last night was fantastic. You wouldn't know it was a tip. He wasn't changing, so you knew it wasn't a tip. But it sounded really good, and it was going. But Andrew, who's been on Owner Stories before from 911 South, he told me I think a similar thing in that episode when we spoke a long time ago. That the Tiptronic, he bought a Tiptronic and he brought it back from Canada, and he said the same sort of thing that once he got it out onto the twisties in the hills, it was actually he could get quite a bit from it. It wasn't that bad. Do you know what I mean? I guess driving around town, it's no great. It'll just be in that sluggish mode. But when you get it out and you actually sort of rasp it out a bit, it's much, much better. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting article.
You considering this? Sorry, you considering this?
I consider everything that's cheaper, Marco. Like I look for things that are, I'm trying to save money.
Yeah. Go for the manual.
You know me. I'm on this.
Sorry, Tiptronic.
I'm on this gathering information. I'm on this gathering information task that Steve has heard so many times before. And I haven't forgotten about the 912. And actually, I'm going to say about the 912, and I send it to you, Marco, and to Steve. But Mark from the UK, who's got the Cassis Red 911, he sent me a link yesterday or today of his friend's car that's for sale on Classic Cars or whatever, UK or whatever that site's called, the slate grey one. Mm-hmm. Beautiful car. I mean, £65,000 for a 912. I know that's the value of restored 912s, but it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But
I'll still say it. I think I was going to say, I reckon for you, somebody like you or me, who doesn't really know which end of the spanner to hold and all that sort of stuff, I would be saying don't get a project car, get something completely restored, something you can just jump into and sort of basically kind of drive away in it.
And I think that's the car. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you have the money, that's the car. Anyone that's listening that wants one, I think that's the car for sure. And it's a great color.
You seriously you've got to consider all of that, because you won't be driving a car that's going to, or that, you really don't want a car that's going to let you down, that isn't going to look the part. So you will be spending that money anyway or more.
Yes.
So, it's always, I think it's just, if you can, obviously, you just try and make it an overall great experience and buy something that's turnkey. You get in it and you enjoy it the day you get it. Unless you enjoy the whole, tinkering with and chasing things up and buying different parts and modifying and all that sort of stuff. I think it just makes more sense when you know that that's what you're going for anyway. I would definitely look for something like that.
But that's the reason, and I think you said it last week, Marco, that's the reason why you bought your VW, right? Because that one was sorted.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's and more for time as well. I mean, I'll still tinker with it. And not that that's already given me a little bit of a hiccup, quite a big hiccup actually. But they all need tinkering, which is fine. So I'll put my twist on it because it's modified anyway. It's not a standard car. I'll just keep adding to it, and I'm happy to do that. It's just that, I don't have the time for the full restoration and dealing with trimmers and painters and all that sort of stuff and the effort that's involved. But I think for you, it always makes sense going for something cheaper, but you will end up spending crazy amount of money. So if you find something that you like and the money is there anyway, that's the way I'd go. I'm sounding like an old guy.
But it's like those.
I'd never say this before.
No, but it's like Steve, I don't know whether you heard this from last week, but it's like the 993 Targa. There's that one at 44, which I think I sent both of you. And there's the ones that are 65. And 65 are the ones that are more sorted. You know what I mean? 59 to 6, this is pounds we're talking here, 65,000 pounds. I think that is even more than what they were new. I think in 1997, they were about 61,000 pounds new. So it's past the actual retail price. But, the 44,000 one obviously needs a lot of work because the seats are all terrible. And this is the choices, this is the choices you make. Do you want to save money now? But then eventually you're going to pay for it, right? Eventually you're going to have to pay for it somewhere along the line. But it's that instant gratification, isn't it? It's that, like what you said, Marco, you get your car. I mean, you've got your Beetle now, right? It's arrived. You've got it in your driveway.
Yes. Oh, yeah, it's arrived.
So, but you've got that car and you've got that instant gratification. You can look at it. It looks really cool. It's got Porsche Fuchs wheels on it. So it's almost like another Porsche.
Mini me.
What's the history behind those wheels? Tell me why people with Beetles put Fuchs on them.
Just period correct, I suppose. But there's in the Volkswagen world, there's this thing called the cow look, which all started in California, and it was very popular to have Fuchs wheels on your car. And this was late 70s, 80s. Pretty much getting rid of all the chrome and putting Fuchs wheels on your car or similar.
Are they originals?
914 wheels as well. I think there were some 914 wheels that people would use. They are originals, yes. Yeah, they are originals. And I was saying to Steve the other day, the first Beetle that I modified and did myself, that had original Fuchs wheels as well, and they were polished. And I wish I'd kept them because that was my love for Porsche has been, since I was a child. And, that was I just felt like I had a bit of Porsche had I held on to them, Yeah. I mean, now I'm happy that I've got the turbo and all that sort of stuff, but they were pretty special wheels. So to find this car with all of that sort of stuff on and done properly, it was pretty good, pretty cool.
Yeah, it's after we spoke last week, I looked at the images, so I sent you the message, and it's very, very cool. It's very, very cool. And, for the money you paid for it, I think it's worth it. Like, it looks really good for the money.
Yeah, well worth it. And, well worth it. But it did have a bit of an issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
You
Which
expect that, though, don't you? You expect that, don't you?
Oh, not these sorts of issues. Not the previous owner's fault at all. We can go on about that later if you like.
Okay, Steve. Speaking of issues, everyone wants to hear about your. Everyone wants to hear about your GT. Everyone wants to hear about your issues. Your GT3. I don't think we mentioned it last week.
I've got many issues.
Let's talk about the GT3 because this thing, a lot of people, because of, I think we keep saying it on this podcast, but a lot of people are watching Friends Green Porsche, and a lot of people notice that in Friends Green Porsche, they're very big on fixing water pumps and replacing water pumps when they do those checks on the cars. Tell the listeners what happened with your little journey to see your folks and what happened with the car.
So I hadn't driven the car in quite some time. Even since you left Sydney, weather's still been pretty kind of bad. Like, it's only just sort of fined up maybe the last week, really. So there was a little window. I'd been trapped at home, kids screaming, all of that sort of stuff. Like, my world has been sort of fairly even more isolated to a degree. So I had a little window, and it's like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to take the car out. I hadn't driven it in maybe 2.5 weeks, maybe.
Right.
My parents live about 40 minutes from where we are, so I just sort of thought, oh, stuff it, I'll just take the car out, jumped in it, went down the street. I noticed sort of maybe about 10 minutes into the 10 minutes into the drive, I looked in my rear window and I could see the guy behind me talking to his wife, partner, whatever, sort of pointing his finger and stuff. And I sort of thought, oh, maybe he's just admiring the car. But then in the same sort of thing, I just sort of noticed some sort of white smoke or steam out the back of my car.
I thought you said he was laughing. I thought you said the guy was pointing and laughing.
It could have been. He could have been going, that wanker, look, his car's kind of going to, that car's about to let go. And
serves him right.
Yeah, it could have been that, but I didn't think anything of it. I literally just sort of thought, oh yeah, I just noticed in the corner of my eye that this guy was just sort of saying something about the car, drove off, went down one of the motorways, and then I'm sort of about 8 minutes from my parents' place, and I get the coolant alert warning on my, what was it, low coolant? Yeah, low coolant alert warning on the dash, and it's like, oh God, what's this? Like I've had it before when the coolant pipes let go. So, you know, like because you're on the motorway, it's like, oh, that's not great. Just keep going, take it easy. And watched the temperature gauge, the engine temperature as I was kind of going along. I knew I wasn't far from mum and dad's. Pulled over by the side of the road, went out the back of the car, and there's just like pink splattered all over the kind of engine bay, the rear bumper. Look under the car, and like I'd literally kind of stopped the car on the side of the road, and it was sort of vomiting like coolant, like it was literally kind of dripping. So sort of had a little kind of mini freak out trying to figure out what to do. Knew I couldn't drive it. Like whatever happened, I was going to be stranded at my parents'. Gave Marco a little call because I had to kind of figure out whether or not to park it in my parents' garage or leave it on the street. Because it was on the weekend, I knew that it had to be left there overnight. Had to get it towed, got it towed to Auto House, and they sort of looked at it. Chris there, when I buzzed him on the Monday just to sort of say, look, this is what's happened. Can I turn it over so it doesn't get dragged up on a flatbed? You know, I can actually drive it up and down the driveway and onto the truck. And the answer to that is yes. Like I am a mechanical idiot. I asked Marco the same question, but the coolant is obviously there to stop the car from overheating once it's kind of completely warmed through. But if you've got no coolant in your car, and you just need to kind of idle it and kind of get it up a tow truck, you know, go for your life, obviously. Got it to Auto House. They sort of diagnosed it. Chris kind of picked it before they even kind of got into it, but it was the water pump. The water pump had failed, which is a bit of a bitch, but, you know, stuff happens. It's how old is the car? It's a 15-year-old car.
After that happened to you, though, and I did the search for it, they say the water pump is the weak point. It is a weak point in 997s.
Yep.
Yeah. Is it 996s as well? Both, right? 997s and 996s?
Assuming so.
More than likely would be, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, coolant seems to be a thing. Like, you know, like I kind of thought, oh, shit, like, but because the coolant pipes were done 3 years ago,
yeah,
you know, like I naively sort of thought, oh, okay, like I'm kind of sorted from a coolant kind of point of view. I never checked back then, and this isn't a slight against Auto House. I'm not sort of saying because they did the pipes, they should have done the water pump. I guess they just sort of made the call at the time. But you know, like 3 years later, then it's a different sort of thing, and the water pump had to kind of be replaced.
But in your head, though, did you kind of think it had been done because you had all those coolant pipes spinned? I kind of thought you had it done as well. That's why I thought, oh, why would it be something to do with the coolant when you've had everything fixed?
I have read like tons of Renlist posts specifically on a 997 GT3 that kind of says, oh, you know, like because everybody kind of says the one thing that you have to do on a Metzger 997.1 or 0.2 or a 996 GT3 or turbo is pin the coolant lines. And a lot of people kind of talk about that. And in the same breath, a lot of people do sort of say, yeah, look, if you're going to go and do it, you should kind of replace the water pump while you're there.
At the same time. So, Marco,
but I guess
this must worry you then with your car.
To be honest, well, when we were on I think I mentioned it to Steve as well, it did get me thinking the next time I was out. But I mean, look, there's just, only because that happened to him. Look, I look at the temp gauge anyway. I keep my eye on it because my car hasn't been pinned. It is something that's on the list. Not that I'm expecting it to go, but just so I'm not as worried when driving it. But look, it's a lot of coin with water pumps. They can go. I mean, it's just one of those. It's a mechanical pump, so seals can let go. It's it's sort of it happens all the time. Not only to Porsche, to many other marques. But yeah, with the whole moving onto tow trucks and all that sort of stuff, thermostat wouldn't have kicked in, which would have been fine. Which means that the coolant wouldn't have been an issue trying to run through the engine. But yeah, look, it's on my mind. It always has been. It always has been, to be honest, because I know it's not done.
But
do I worry about it? Well, not really. I get in it and drive it. If something is to happen, then I'd like to think that, with me keeping an eye on everything and I'm fairly safe. But, I'm not an idiot. I know that it can happen anytime.
what is the kilometers they're saying? I can't remember from the article because I remember I did a search after it happened to you, Steve. And what is the kilometers in the water pump goes? Is it 60,000 they're saying? 60,000 kilometers?
Well, see, I don't think it's obviously kind of generalizations and people's experience, but I was going to say the car's almost 15 years old. It's got 90,000 K on it. It's a well-driven GT3. No idea in terms of if you were going to sort of try to be preemptive and kind of do preventative maintenance, when should you kind of actually go ahead and sort of go and swap it out before something starts to kind of, drip or literally kind of break. It sounded a little bit dramatic, right? And it looked a little bit dramatic. I sent you both the video of it. But at the end of the day, the worst, I was lucky because I was kind of close to home-ish, a home where the car could kind of stay, had to organise a towing and all of that sort of stuff. It wasn't really a big deal in the end. I think when you sort of read about coolant problems in Metzger's, the dramatic thing is that if the pipes literally kind of let go, if they kind of, the fitting actually kind of comes out of the that little housing and it literally kind of dumps coolant all over your back wheels, and then if you've got somebody following you, that's where people sort of say it's really that is kind of properly kind of dramatic. But when my coolant pipes let go, it didn't, that didn't happen. It just started to kind of drip, and it lost coolant, but it didn't send me off into the hedges kind of backwards, if you know what I mean, and it didn't affect anybody behind me. So I think
don't sit behind me.
Yeah,
don't ever sit behind me.
Well, see, the thing about your car, man, is it's an old car. We all sort of expect stuff to kind of happen, and I still kind of go I've had quite a. With the benefit of hindsight now, this happened maybe a month ago. Is it about a month ago?
Yeah, roughly that.
I just kind of go, I've read enough about sort of 997 GT3s, so I kind of have this sort of little checklist in my mind of knowing what a lot of people kind of experience, and I've just sort of basically ticked off another sort of thing that I know that kind of basically happens in the course of owning the car. And you don't expect it to behave like a brand new car, because it's not. It isn't going to be literally kind of bulletproof.
But if you're if you're pinning the Marco, if you're pinning the coolant lines and you're doing the water pump, I mean, that must be what, about 8K? 7 or 8K?
Yeah, probably about that, I think. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
That's a big cost for preventative maintenance, isn't it? I mean, you have to sort of think twice, Marco. That's a lot of money just to be...
Yeah, but sorry, I think, well, with me, it's not only the pinning of the lines. So I'd be looking at the clutch as well.
Yep.
There are a few things on there, so it's not just the pinning of the lines. There's a fair few things thrown in there, and it's going to be a big bill. But I mean, it's a pretty clean car, and I don't expect. I mean, water pumps generally aren't that big a deal. They just get replaced. They're on the bill, and they saw a little bit of weeping, and they suggest you replace it. I mean, in Steve's case, it sort of happened, while he was out driving, which sort of sucks. But generally, they're just one of those parts that that do need replacing. And 70 or 80,000 Ks isn't, it's not a shock.
No.
It's they work pretty hard.
Yeah, and your car is so low
yeah.
kilometers, though, isn't it? Your car is probably fine because it's so low kilometers.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I hit 50,000 on our drive the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, milestone.
50,000. Why did I think
much
you were
is
only in the
ownership?
30s?
How far have you gone in yours?
Who, me?
No, Marco, since he's owned the car because he's not
just under 6,000 Ks, I think.
Wow, that's a lot.
More than Michael.
Yeah.
That's more than I've done in 5 years. What are you doing? Actually,
I get out and drive it. I enjoy it.
Actually, I'll tell you how much I've done. I have done 40,300 when I bought it, 56,200 now.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'd do that in 8 months.
So what's that? 16,000. But I did 3,300 kilometers when I was back. So it's quite a lot.
That's good.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Good.
See, I get
the car
out and drive.
needs it though.
It does.
The car
it
needs
needs
that.
it.
Yeah.
It does. It does.
The cars aren't meant to. I mean, with all the rubber seals, and you did take it into Auto House to get a whole bunch of things corrected, and most of those will be rubber seals that are usually, have some sort of oil or something running on them or over them to keep them fresh. So they're just it's not great to have a car sit around too long, but in your case you can't do much about it. But get out and drive them. Yeah,
well, this time it won't be as long, so it'll be fine. Speaking of that,
just to round that out though, in case anybody is interested in listening, so you kind of go, hey, when you sort of swap the water pump out, what else do you do whilst that's being done?
Yes.
There's a couple of the drive belts classically gets done when you do that, and there's 2 roller bearing type things and a tensioner as well that I have done.
Yeah.
The rollers weren't mandatory. That was a question I put to Auto House at the time, and they just said, look, we'll have a look at it when we kind of open it up. We shouldn't really leave the engine, but at this kind of mileage, etc., it's one of the things to kind of look at. And I opted to do it because it would have cost me, if I waited, it would have cost me another $1,200 in labor.
Right.
But
and that's just
that. It's the classic thing of, like what Marco was sort of saying, when you kind of pin the coolant lines, well, you got to drop the engine. So therefore you naturally look at the clutch. And I don't know, again, being not super mechanical, you ask that question and you sort of trust your mechanic kind of thing. But if you start reading that shit online in terms of forums, the whole while you're in there sort of thing can be ridiculously long if you kind of get a bit kind of too crazy with your preemptive sort of maintenance.
Yeah, it is. Things like the pulleys. Sorry, Michael. Things like the pulleys and belt and all that sort of stuff. When you get new pumps with fresh bearings, and usually they like to do it. It goes hand in hand, because then you can't put an old belt on. It's been on there for a while, running at different tension. Obviously, they can loosen up. So it sort of makes sense, and they're not big ticket items. But yeah, I can sort of see what you're saying with the whole searching online. You can really be spooked by what people think, or what they've had done and what they think people should be doing. And I sort of try and look past that and keep it at, I know clutch is a no-brainer. Get a new clutch in there, as well as obviously pinning the lines. Water pump, I'll sort of look at as well, and I'll just go off what Auto House think. When it comes to that as well.
It's just more I reckon just with that though is because the bills start to kind of add up. Once you kind of go, oh yeah, okay, kind of throw that in and throw this in and do this and do that. What was I won't divulge the actual kind of cost of my bill, but when you start adding kind of little bits and pieces here and there, you are literally adding, like you're talking about like not a couple $100, like you wind up adding like $1,000 or another $2,000. So it can get pretty hefty. Like, like my car's been great. Like it has been really reliable. And in the 8 years that I've owned it, we've talked about in a previous podcast in terms of how much maintenance money I've had to spend on it. I think I've still been pretty kind of lucky, and I've gotten, like really good use out of the car in terms of the time and the actual mileage, and I enjoy the hell out of it. But, like the cars need looking after. And, when something does go wrong, it isn't, I don't reckon it's necessarily cheap.
Can we go back to that point about the cars need looking after, right? What I'm always confused with is that if you get a service done and the service is to check your car and to check your car to see issues that might be coming up, you get the list when you get your service done, these are the things you should do. Wouldn't that be something that, being a 997 or a 996, wouldn't that be something that would be looked over? Considering you had a service not that long ago.
Yep.
And they would have done the service. It's still, and I'm not trying to bag Autohouse, but I'm really surprised that they didn't pick this up. Like, there must have been some signs there, Marco. Do you know if there will be signs, Marco, or there's no signs at all for the water pump?
Not always. Not always. You can get some seeping. Look, sometimes it's just pot luck. The car's in for a service when, things like the water pump are showing signs of, giving up. Water pumps can let go. Just as they did with Steve. Yeah. It's, look, I mean, they would have checked, with places like Autohouse, they know exactly what to check on what particular models as well. So, and in saying Autohouse, there are many other specialists out there. They would have it on their checklist. But parts like that, sometimes you just, it's not. They won't always show a sign of wear, per se.
So is that similar to coils? Is that similar to coils though? Is that similar to coils? Like the common thing with 997s, 996, I think it's 996s, how the coils get cracked, and they have to be replaced. Isn't that a thing that would be noticed, be checked? Or does that just happen out of the blue?
No, coils you should visual inspection, yeah. Especially, if they're doing plugs and it's a major service, then that would be something that they'd be handling and have a good look at, yeah.
All right, so have you guys had your coils checked? Are your coils okay?
Yes.
Because it's a common thing where they split, right? I don't know whether that's on GT3 on the Metzger, but on the Carrera it is.
Yeah,
I mean, mine were replaced, right? Mine were just replaced.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if that's something that's come up with you guys when you've had your services done, that they've said all okay with the coils.
No, not necessarily. Not in those words, no.
I don't know. It worries me a little bit. These things, that things are, sometimes things can get missed. No one's perfect. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing. You got to trust your kind of mechanic, your indie, or whoever. If you're going to a kind of dealership sort of thing, you just got to trust the person that's kind of doing it. Like, people make mistakes, so I make mistakes in my job all the time, and I kind of hope that people will kind of forgive me for being human, sort of thing. Like, I think the same respect is sort of warranted with mechanics, people like Autohouse kind of thing. Like, yeah, for sure they make mistakes, and I'm not suggesting they've made a mistake with my car at all.
No, neither am I. I'm just saying that it's a common thing that you should check, right? If it's a common fault area. That's why I was wondering if there's any telltale signs for water pump. No,
and I was going to say, the other thing is that just sometimes shit happens too. Like, it happened to me the service before, where the car went in, and then was it the window sort of thing happened, or I can't even remember. But
ABS, was it the airbag? I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that was sheer coincidence. It wasn't because they opened the car up. It wasn't because they touched it, kind of thing. It was just, absolute coincidence that a week later, something else kind of happens. So I don't think we can necessarily, I know the thought might cross our mind, but I don't think we could necessarily always kind of go, hey, shouldn't the mechanic kind of have a crystal ball and sort of tell us exactly what's going to go wrong and when it's going wrong?
But I guess it's like those horror stories you get, and there's been a few people on owner stories with the PPI, where they get a PPI done, pick their car up, drive it home, and then, failure, something happens, IMS, ball scoring, whatever, like they've had these checks done and everything's okay, and it's not okay, so.
Yeah, well, there's no way around that, though, with a ball scoring inspection. If they've carried out that inspection, then all should be, and they've ticked it as okay, then it should be okay. In IMS, all they can really do is check oil and check filter and all that sort of stuff, unless they're dropping the engine. And
yeah, but I think there was someone on owner stories. I'm sorry if the person is listening, I can't remember who it was, who had the car apparently had the IMS solution done. I think it had a PPI, and then there was a failure. I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. But this comes back to something I was reading again last night, looking through all this 993 stuff, Steve and Marco. And also I got a message from Stuart, who's behind Luftwasser in Australia. And he sent me a message. He sent me a message and said, about the 993. And he said, if you're thinking about getting one in the UK, because I think he's looking for a Testarossa or something as well to bring it back into Australia. But, he said PPI, compression and leak down. And then he thought what I was saying about the cost last week was a bit high with all the importing, because I think I said it was about 35K on top. I'm only using one calculator. Stuart could be right. I could be wrong. I just said I'm only using this one calculator. He thought it was a bit too high for the cost. But anyway, going back to the checks that you do, right? Like in the UK or whatever, but wherever you're buying the car, is the 993, is that a safe way to know the engine's okay with the compression and leak down? Because you start going into the forums and you start going into that rabbit hole, we'll call it, even though I hate that word, go into the rabbit hole, and people are saying, if it's 10%, it's still okay. Some people are saying it shouldn't be 10%. That means it's almost ready to be rebuilt. Is it 5%? How do you know what the baseline is? How do you know what to follow? Do you know what I mean?
Forums and the internet are great, but they can also be really bad when you're looking at buying a car, because all you're doing is doing all the research you can, and research does get infiltrated by people's opinions, not always their experience, but opinions. And you just you got to be careful with the PPI. I had the PPI done at Auto House, obviously, and full trust, basically. If you go into it just, thinking twice about it all and whether you can trust somebody and whether they're going to do the leak down test properly and all this sort of stuff, I didn't get a bore score done. Over revving they weren't able to do the over revving on my car because very early models, they couldn't get that data from them.
Oh, right.
It comes down to trust. Basically, that's what it comes down to. You can do all the research under the sun, but you've a lot of it is trusting the person that you're sending the car to.
Yep.
And I hate to say it, but gut instinct and who you're buying off and all that sort of stuff.
The forum stuff too is like, it's obviously generalizing kind of thing. Like it's such a specific kind of case. You've got to judge the car that's in front of you that you're sort of kind of considering. Then you've got to throw into the mix the other variable is the person that's sort of checking it out. But I'd still just kind of go, Marco and I, we've got a common cousin who we're sort of trying to get on a bit of a shift from his M3 to his Porsche, right? He won't have much of a clue kind of thing. And like, I think you sort of have to understand, like, same thing, you're not buying a brand new car. So in terms of risk and probability and stuff, there is a good chance that something's going to go wrong. So you do have to kind of, understand that. Like you're buying a used car. So there is absolutely no guarantees. And if you're kind of going, hey, I've got a limit of £50,000 to spend and I'm at my limit, if something goes wrong, I'm fucked, then don't buy the car. Like you've always got to have...
Here's a question for you then, Steve, because you owned the 993 for how many years?
Yep.
7 years?
No, 12 years.
Sorry, 12 years. Sorry, I'm thinking about the GT3.
Yep.
12 years. 12 years of 993 ownership, right?
Yep.
993 is pretty much out of reach to most of us, right?
Yep.
And I think we all like them. I mean, obviously the 964 has had more of a sort of thing at the moment.
Yep.
The price of a base Carrera is something like, am I right in saying it's 230,000? I've seen them advertised for 230,000
I've no
Australian.
idea.
They're
I've lost track of
230,
it.
229,000. I think there was one. Marco, did you see that?
Some have popped up at that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a really good 993 for sale on car sales. I think it's a really good one. Is that UK delivered one? The UK one, the guy's selling has reduced the price again to 155 or 159. The blue one with the grey interior, which I like that interior with the hardback sport seats. I think that's a bargain because the price I've worked out for a landed £65,000 car is about that price. So it's already landed. You don't have to worry about it, right? So
the car I mentioned last week, the 993, or on the last pod,
yes,
that I was looking at, I'm pretty sure is that exact car.
Oh, really? I would buy that car.
Yeah, that's the UK import. Yeah, it looks really, really clean.
I would buy the car. And it's a C2.
Great spec.
It's a C2. It's not a Targa. And the price of C2s now here are obviously, look, the Targa, Steve, as you know, is like about 59.65, right? That's where you're getting a good one. Some of them are more. There's a really
59, 60,000
£65,000, right?
Right, yep.
Carrera 4, there's a really good Carrera 4 at JZM or whatever it's called for £73,000. You know, this Carrera 2, you're getting up even higher than that. You're getting higher than the Carrera 4. You know what I mean? So your prices are crazy. And like, I guess that justifies the price in Australia being about 220, 230, which people are trying to sell them for now for the 993, I think. Right?
Interesting.
And that's not my question though. My question is, you've owned a 993 for a long time. If someone's looking to buy a 993, you know, I've just been doing my usual stuff that I always do. And I guess this is how I gather knowledge about different models too, by just thinking I want to get one, and then I go in and I start reading all the stuff, reading the manuals, reading the, you know, last night I read a technical thing, which I've got open on my computer, the technical information about the 911 Targa model year and about all the noises, the 5 different noises that happen in the Targa roof, and what the service dealer, what they should say to the customer and what they should do. That's on one of those documents.
About TSB, it's a bulletin.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting, right? Yeah, service bulletin. So what would you know, this thing about doing the compression and on air-cooled or even on water-cooled, this compression and leak-down test, what would you do now if you were thinking, okay, I've found a 993, it's not the one I had, I'm going to add it to my GT3. What checks would you do? Would you just do a basic PPI? Would you do something more knowing that you kind of know what those little issues are with a 993?
It's the same thing. I just don't think you can generalize. Like, I think it depends on the car. And so call it me specifically. If a car came along, say like the blue on grey one that you're talking about, the UK import.
Yes.
If I was in the market for that and I wanted to kind of consider buying it, then negotiate with the owner, get to a price where we sort of feel like we're kind of all fair based on PPI. In my instance, I'd have it sort of sent across to Autohouse. Now, it depends on the history of the thing, like, you know, because you're talking old cars now. So, like, when was the last time, like, has it had the bottom end done? Like, what sort of work has been kind of done to it and by who? Which is information that I would want to know, but also, like, I think it would be relevant to somebody like Autohouse. And then generally you'd kind of say to Autohouse, tell me what you think. And then if you think it needs, like, you know, like the compression test done and all those sorts of things, and the leak down, get them to kind of weigh it up. And generally I think that's what they may have sort of said to me once in the past, where you kind of go, oh, with this PPI, you're going to do a leak down. And they'll kind of go, we'll do a leak down if we think that it warrants it, if anything suspicious kind of comes up. And you get them to kind of figure it out, because, like, the older the car is, like, the more variables there are in terms of, like, how well it's been maintained and stuff like that. So I just don't think you can flat out sort of go, hey, if I'm going to go and buy a 993, that I definitely have to throw all of this money at it, like, in terms of inspecting it, to know for sure, because there's not going to be any guarantees anyway.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, when you're talking 993 before, and that silver one that you sent both of us, that seemed cheaper.
Yeah.
My
£20,000 cheaper.
Yeah, my thing about that is I reckon there is no such thing as a cheap 993 personally. I mean, I'll say that here, like in Australia, because put into context you and like your sort of mindset and how handy and all of that sort of stuff and how fussy you are about stuff, like, which is kind of pretty much on par with me. I'd just kind of go, like, if it's cheap for a reason. You're going to wind up just tipping money at that thing because, you know, like as soon as you kind of discover like the little spots of rust around the windscreen and you have to pull the windscreen out, and if the windscreen cracks, and
did you have that so many issue?
Yeah,
yours?
I did.
You did have the rust issue.
Expensive fix. Yeah.
Right. So it's a common, very common thing.
It's common. Yeah. It's common and it's tricky. Like, you know, like, use that as an example. Like there's aftermarket windscreens, but you kind of want to use like the factory one. I don't even know if they still make them, but that has to be fitted really carefully, because the reason why they corrode is that if they're not fitted properly, it rubs up against the paintwork, and there's a little channel in there. So people kind of fit like new gaskets and all of this sort of stuff. But 993's brilliant car, and they are reliable for what they are. Like, you know, it's a German sports car, blah, blah, blah. But when something goes wrong on that thing, like I started spending huge maintenance money on it. And it is they're great cars and they are reliable. But at that point in time, like mine had what, 130,000 K, and it was about 20 years old, I think, at the time where I finally let go of it. But I was racking up some pretty monster bills. Like every time I took it into Auto House, you know, on top of the kind of standard service, I was probably paying them a visit like twice a year, and every time it would kind of go in there, something else would kind of pop up. And I'm not sort of saying that you have to kind of go and do it, but with my headspace of like, you know, I love this car to bits, I want it to be, you know, as good as it possibly can be, I didn't say no to anything, and I just poured money into it. And I think that's the thing again. It's not that means that if you kind of have a car and you find something wrong with it, but somebody hasn't done it, it doesn't mean that it's a bad car. It just it's in relation to the owner's kind of headspace, because I'm that sort of person that wants it to be like perfect. And at that point in time, I had enough money just to kind of keep pouring it in. You know, if it was me right now, I'm so poor, like I wouldn't be pouring, and I wouldn't be saying yes to everything. So
yeah. No, it's a big decision. But Marco, you just said, you know, you bought your Beetle just recently, right? And you bought it from a reasonably well-known place, right? And I guess
privately.
Yeah, and all the checks were done. Privately, sorry. And all the checks were done. So when you get the car, how did you said you had a surprise. So how did it get missed? You said it wasn't the owner's fault. So how did it get missed? You didn't do the checks? You forgot, you didn't want to do all the checks, or just something happened since you started driving it?
No, so something you learn, a big part of an older car or a car that's been restored is you are buying the owner. And we do that with the Porsches, but more so with cars like that, because like I said, I knew him. I'd met him a couple of times, and I knew that he was pretty fussy. And going off all the things he had fitted to the car, I could sort of see that he was pretty switched on, didn't drive it much. Friday night, I picked the car up on Thursday, and then Friday night I got together with a couple of guys, other Volkswagen guys, and, you know, caught up for some dinner and went out for a drive and dinner at Homebush. And I got back in the car and I thought I could smell fuel.
Right.
Checked under the car, thinking it was coming out of the tank, but you couldn't really see anything. So I thought, okay, well, I know that the carbies were pretty rich because there's a bit of a procedure getting this thing started, which was one thing that I was always going to address anyway in terms of jetting and sorting them out. But we sort of took off again, moved, and later on in the night, we parked up. Later on in the night, we're all sort of saying our goodbyes, and I start the car, and I was just about to take off, and the guy behind me ran up to me and told me to switch it off. And that's not a good thing when you when you hear that. So I turned it off and we got around the back and there was a shitload of fuel pouring out.
Oh, what?
So we lift up the deck lid and had a look, and basically one of the carbies was just pouring out fuel straight over the spark plugs and down onto the exhaust.
Oh, right.
Which is a recipe for,
yes,
fire and loss of car. So
right.
I was really lucky to have found that. So here we are at, that was probably midnight.
Right.
Luckily, I packed some tools, and a couple of the other guys had, some tools as well. So off came the linkages, carbies, because it was just something we couldn't get to. The carbie had to come off to tighten this little fitting, and once we got the carbie off, it wasn't even finger tight. It was
really?
pathetic, yeah. And it's supposed to be nipped up really well with a brass washer as well, which are meant to basically crush and help pull in whatever you're tightening. So check the other side, check the other carbie, and that was wet as well from the same issue. So it was 3 a.m. when we were done. Oh, sorry, 3 a.m. by the time I got home. So
the previous owner, Michael, sorry, Marco, the previous owner hadn't been driving the car, because wouldn't have this happened straight away if he was driving the car?
He drove it sparingly. I think he was heading out to Cars and Coffee every now and then. I don't think he had taken it on a decent drive up since the last tune or service that he had done in Feb, I think it was.
Okay.
And this night I took it out for a proper drive and gave it a proper squeeze as well. So I don't think he didn't have enough time in it since that last tune for this to pop up. And I haven't had a chat to him about it. Not that it's not his fault at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know that he's going to be as surprised as I was. But it just, look, it was a pain, but it can happen. These sorts of things can happen, especially with fittings and fluids, like whether it be fuel or water or oil. It takes a little while to get through, but once it does start to seep through, you can get a proper pour out, just like your water pumps, just like, so sometimes it's not something that'll just sit there seeping or dripping. It'll pour out. And I did think of you, Michael.
The life of owning a classic car. Imagine if that was me.
Yeah.
Imagine if that was me. I would have just said, it's okay, I'll just drive home.
Exactly. In a 912, you sort of think, well...
And I'll go, where's my fire extinguisher that Steve gave me? Oh, it's in my garage storage cage. Whoops. That's how prepared I am. That's where it is at the moment.
Actually, I wanted to ask that.
Yes.
Do you drive around with a fire extinguisher, Marco? Have you got one in the...
I do, yeah. In all the old cars.
Have you ever had to use one?
I've always got a fire... No.
Yeah.
Almost.
No. And I've had a few fuel issues in the past, but it could have been... I did drive home with two, mine and somebody else threw me theirs as well. So. Yeah, Michael, it's warts and all if you're going for a 912, unfortunately.
Okay, 993 it is then.
Yeah, a sorted one.
Let's talk about... I think we might have to end it soon because it's 1:45 and I'm starting to fade.
I'll push through, mate.
Push through. I got to get up early in the morning. I just really got a haircut in the morning as well, so I got to get up early. I forgot. I just did a search on Google Trends, all right, for the Porsche search queries past 12 months. Mm-hmm. And it's quite surprising. Well, it's probably not surprising, actually. Do you want to know what was at the top? What was number one?
Okay.
This was done. This is past 12 months. Google Trends for the word for Porsche, the Porsche searches. Porsche Cayenne 2020.
2020.
Yep. Oh, it could be 2022. I might have written that down wrong. Hang on, I've still got it open. Let me have a look.
I'm doing it.
Mate, don't do it because you got a different result. Okay, 2022. Sorry. So the number one was Porsche Cayenne 2022. Number two was Porsche Macan 2022. Yep. Number three was Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT. Porsche, this is related queries, Steve. So not related topics, related queries. Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo, Porsche GT4 RS, and then I think it's Porsche GT3 Touring. So everything is SUV or electric. There's no searches in there for 911. There's no 911 searches. Is this...
we're in the minority. Enthusiasts are the minority in terms of Porsche.
We are, aren't we? That's where I was getting to. We are in the minority, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it surprised me. It surprised me. And you see the other side. I don't know if you got the same one. The other side about related topics.
Yep.
I mean, Porsche 911 came up in related topics. It's got 2020. I don't know what related topics mean, though, in a way. Related topics are what? But 2020 Porsche... well, there you go. 2022 Porsche 911 luxury car. Cross Turismo. Cayenne again. Macan again. An electric vehicle. So that was the other side of it.
Is it a surprise? Because, I mean, if you're a 911 guy, if you're a Porsche fanatic, would you be punching in those sorts of searches? Whereas people that would be after a little family car, comparing it to a Q5 or whatever else they're comparing it to, they will be out there, punching in and trying to get as much info and comparing types of leather and heated seats and cooled seats and all that sort of stuff.
Good point.
If it's a 911 you're wanting, you know exactly what you're going for.
Yeah, people that don't know what they want. Hey, let's get Steve's opinion, Marco, because we spoke about it last week. Steve, just quickly before we go, your thoughts on two things actually, because I'm interested to know what you think. 992 Sport Classic, what you think about it. I mean, everyone knows that it's a 2023 model, Porsche 911 Sport Classic. Yep. Special edition limited to 1250 cars. We didn't say this last week, Marco. Inspired by classic 911s with ducktail spoiler 5-spoke wheels, 405 kW turbo engine with rear-wheel drive, 7-speed manual. Price from $599,100 before on-road costs in Australia. So a $660,000 on-the-road 911.
Is it an exclusive manufacturer car?
It is.
It is? Yeah, okay. I'm really undecided. Like, I saw it before because somebody broke it. Somebody broke the press embargo like a week before. It was like Car and Driver somewhere. So then everybody else kind of started talking about it, and you could tell that it caught a lot of people off guard because then like everybody was scrambling to kind of get all their information out. So it wasn't sort of like the normal seamless thing where you get all the information in the one hit. So I think when I started messaging you guys, the pictures had been released, but not the info that kind of went with it. And I was judging it purely aesthetically. And I think aesthetically, I kind of went, I'm not really sure. It doesn't look sort of as special as the 997 equivalent. Like the color's cool, the double bubble roof is there, the ducktail, take it or leave it, Fuchs-ish wheels. I know you guys sort of said it wasn't as cool. So I agree with pretty much all of that. The interior I wasn't really that kind of hot on as well.
Oh, I like the interior.
I'm not... so I just kind of went, maybe it's because it was sort of like familiar in terms of, everybody knows about the 997 version, and then it's sort of like, oh, well, we'll just kind of re-release something kind of like that, a couple of generations later. So I'm really unsure. Like in terms of it being sort of like basically a turbo, but rear-wheel drive, it sort of does make it interesting, but I don't know. I don't actually kind of know what to think about it.
I had this written down. Sorry, I had this written down actually.
Yeah.
Are we getting to the point where the 992 just seems to have, barely out and already has so many limited edition and
and there'll be plenty more. Yeah.
Different. Yeah, it's. Look at the 99. Comparing it to the 991, 992. They're just really pounding it. So is this? It probably is aimed at your.
Last hurrah.
I think it's a GT. Yeah, look, I think it's a GT3. They're trying to swing people maybe out of the GT3 or give them an option.
Think so. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
but in order to get one, you're going to have to be on the list. So you probably already got like a GT3.
Yeah, I know, but Exactly.
Yeah.
600K though in Australia. It's more expensive than the GT3 Touring.
Yeah.
So
I last week said people would drop their orders from GT3 Touring and get this. I don't know if they will at that price. It's a lot of money. And you're right, Marco, what you were saying. Wasn't the original Sport Classic the 997? Wasn't that in the 0.2 of the 997 generation?
yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was,
So this is in the 0.1. So they're already putting it forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they're doing that as a point of difference. What did you think of the ad, Steve? I meant to say, did you watch that ad? Tasha hated it. I showed it to Tasha.
Yeah.
She hated it. She said, why is it so long? I said, I really like it.
Yeah, I'm a bit cynical about the marketing part of it. Like, I know it's sort of like a heritage thing, and because I've got an advertising background, it's just like, yeah, like, man, Porsche is such a strong brand, such a smart kind of company. What they don't need to do, which like a lot of brands do, is lean too heavily on the history. Like, they've got history that they can do it with, but they don't necessarily kind of need to do that. Because I think if they're not careful and they constantly do houndstooth and they constantly kind of do, tribute type stuff, like in terms of, like the 992, the interior badges are all like an old SC kind of in terms of the type style.
Yeah.
Like if they're not careful and all they do is sort of hark back, but they don't do some of the really cool stuff like they did in that Porsche Unseen, like the book and like all of their sort of
Not pushing forward. Yeah.
design studies things. Yeah. They're good enough to kind of do the design studies stuff that they don't need to kind of, always go retro, which I think is why people sort of push back on like the heritage models, like that Targa thing with the big, the number and the roundel on the door.
Didn't work that well, did it?
Yeah, it didn't.
You're right, actually. They really are pushing the heritage a little bit too much. I mean, we love the heritage, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think, though, Steve? That thing that I don't know if I got to the point last week, but there is no substitute. The Porsche ad, right? That Porsche tagline. Do you think that still is the underlying theme in most of Porsche's advertising?
I don't know. They don't really do that much like traditional advertising anymore.
But the feel, though. See, when I watched that ad, the first thing I thought of was there is no substitute. Even though the song's about a love song and it's like the couple or whatever, it's like they're still telling you there is no substitute. My wife is the best, my car is the best, it's the best forever. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the story that they're telling. If you know what I mean? Like it's a bit like that.
Oh, okay. I didn't sort of read it exactly like that because I just sort of went, oh, okay, you're just doing like a super retro kind of thing. From the, the grade in the sort of the cinematography and the styling and all of that kind of stuff. It's just like,
that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like if you're asking about is Porsche still so unique that there is no substitute because you're talking to an enthusiast, depending on which one you're talking about. Like if you kind of go 911, then yeah, because I believe it because I've been spouting that crap at Marco and my cousin who, I'm trying to get to jump into the water, get out of his M3 and get into a Porsche. Like I literally am saying to him, there is nothing like, rear-wheel drive, flat six engine, all the dynamics, all the shape of it, blah, blah, blah. And there is no other car that has those kind of attributes. Yeah, so that's
But he's not a true enthusiast. He's not a true lover of Porsche, right? So you still got to convince him, don't you? You know what I mean? For us, it's different, isn't it? For us, it's different, right, Marco? Like we're already in there. You know what I mean? Like I see the Sport Classic and I can see some things wrong with it and it's expensive, but I wouldn't say, I'm not saying I wouldn't have one, and I'm not saying I wouldn't like to have one.
Yeah.
This is the thing.
Knowing this particular cousin that Steve's referring to, he is, but he's, I mean, much like me, not that I always had the money sort of sitting there, but for some reason, it sort of takes you a while. You do your, in his case, he's doing his M3 thing and, the Renault Megane Sports and the little hot hatches and all that sort of stuff. And you don't actually realize until you get a taste. And I was saying that to Steve, if he was to get it, he or anybody in particular that, is into Porsche, the smile, that smile they get when they first get out of the car after having driven it, especially with, a bunch of other Porsches, and they get it. All of a sudden, that they've just, they get it. they've got it now, and they get what the whole Porsche thing is, you know.
But look at us. Look at us even in Sydney. You know, those roads, you know, even the drive to Wiseman's Ferry and then back. You get out of the car at the end and you just feel better, don't you? Like you feel happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just, you know, you don't even have to be going that fast all the time, but you just have that feeling and you just feel like you're happy. It's just that feeling. And you need to sort of, you know, get your cousin around to that feeling that he will have. It'll be better than a feeling when he gets out of his BMW, I'm sure.
I'm sure, I don't know what you think, Marco, but like it's a no-brainer. Like he's a mad car enthusiast, you know, like he's same lineage as my uncle, like Marco's father-in-law, my mum, blah, blah, blah. That's how he's my cousin. He's got rev head. He's rev head all over. Like he throws tons of money at cars. He changes cars every couple of years. He does the whole wheels, exhaust, everything on absolutely every car that he owns. He tinkers away and he loves it. You know, like he's a mad petrol head all the kind of way through, and he always has been from like a young guy. So it's not a question of whether or not he'll like it. You know for sure that he'll like it. It's just the sad part of it at the moment is that he's a young professional dude with a family. He can afford to kind of get an F80 M3. He'll love like a 911. It's just his catch now is that because they're getting so expensive, like for him to get into, you know, a 911 now, he's had a taste for M3. Maybe it's a topic for another kind of podcast.
Yeah.
But at that price point, it's much harder because he'll, like at the moment, like, you know, the last thing that he kind of mentioned to me was he sent me an ad for a 997 Carrera like yours, right?
The one at Classic Throttle Shop.
It was something like it. I think it was a private. It was a private sale one, right? And he sort of said, "Oh, what's this like?" And I kind of explained how you feel about yours and what your car is like and stuff like that. But I'm sure that he'll absolutely love the car if he kind of went and jumped in one and drove it. But there is that little thing of he probably. I think I said this to him. It's like the one thing is that you probably will think that it's a little bit slow compared to your F80 M3.
Yeah.
But you'll find your jollies in driving it hard, the sound, the handling, you know, like all of that sort of stuff is just different. So as long as you can kind of get over like your want to quote sort of kilowatts and, you know, how quick it is off the line and stuff like that, which we've been on enough drives with him. I know that he loves his cars, but he's not out drag racing people and he's not kind of dropping clutches and shit like that. So I don't think if he kind of shifted from his F80 to a 997, I actually don't think that he would be unhappy, but he needs to figure that out by kind of jumping in it sort of thing. And there's such different cars now. But so I don't think, I think like if we managed to get him into one, if he kind of went for a drive or if he sort of was a passenger in Marco's car or my car, like, which he hasn't been in, you'll get him for sure. Like he'll absolutely love it. It's just, it's gotten harder. Like it's just the price of entry to kind of getting into a Porsche now is so much higher, which, just, you know.
It is. I think I did all of that as well. As soon as you get something like an M3 or a GTI or whatever it is, first thing you do is start to mod it. And sometimes modding can almost turn into trying to make it something it's not.
Yeah.
And I find now with the 996, I don't want to make it anything but what it is. You know, you tinker with it, you might tweak things, you'll fix things on it, but you're not, you know, I generally think that not many people are out there trying to remap it and, you know, throw bigger turbos on it and just trying to sort of, you know, I mean, we do our interior sort of stuff, but it just sort of seems that, and in his particular case, he did, you know, within a couple of weeks of getting the M3, he started to, you know, put an exhaust and play around with exhausts and try and get some more power out of it and all that sort of stuff. I just think that, I think if he gets a taste of it, he'll be quite happy with 996 or 7 or whatever it is, and he can always play around with those as well. But I think what it lacks in power compared to his F80, it will make up in spades with character and you know, the feel of it. And the sound of it, which you can't replicate. You can put all the exhausts you like on an M3 or a C63 or whatever you like, but it's just not going to be the same.
Good point. Good point.
And I said all that stuff to him too. It's just he's got to have a little go. It's no different from me kind of trying to entice you, Michael. Like
You
it's
don't
like,
have to
yeah,
entice
drive a
me.
GT3, drive a GT3. Like once you just get the little taste and stuff, if you're kind of really into it, you won't.
But I missed that
You
boat.
won't sort of
That train's gone.
You won't turn back, kind of thing. So
That train's gone. The days of 220, 190,000 are gone.
yeah,
Sell
what
your
is that?
crypto.
That doesn't even
Sell your crypto.
You have to be in the $300,000 club. All right.
doesn't even get you into a 993, which is crazy.
Can you believe a 997 Carrera is now 150,000? That's what I was saying.
No, I cannot.
150,000.
Mm.
Exactly the same as
It's up
mine.
there.
Just tell the listeners, one at Classic Throttle Shop came up black, exactly the same as mine. It's 150,000 Australian dollars. It will sell, and it will sell quickly. You watch, that car will be gone in a flash. Mark my words.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it. We're finished. We're not going to get into the other stuff. We can't do a 3-hour podcast. I have to crash.
Push through, mate. Push through.
Push through. Anything else? I always say that. Anything else before we go?
Nope.
No.
So what did you think? Did you guys enjoy it?
What?
The three-way.
podcast?
The Banshee. Yeah. It was good.
I like being on top.
All right.
I like Michael's hair. You don't need a haircut.
Why? What's wrong with my hair?
You don't need a haircut. You don't
Really?
need a haircut. I'm saying I like it. You don't need a haircut.
Something's wrong. What's wrong, Marco?
Nothing. You don't. I'm just saying you don't need a haircut. Push on for another couple of hours with this. Let's go.
No, I have to get up early. It's 2:00. I've got to get up at 7. All right. Thank you, Steve.
Rose, nice to
Thanks,
see
Marco.
you again. It's been a
Nice to
while.
see you. Haven't seen you in ages. People think we see each other all the time. I say no, we don't.
It's hard time difference now, and actually to answer the question too, like we're
All right.
people kept sort of saying where the fuck is me? My
Yes.
routine's sort of changed massively. My wife went back to work. My kids are all over the shop. My work has gone down the toilet. So
And I'm in
that's
London.
where I am. And Michael's in London. So trying to organise a time where we can all kind of get together where it's actually quiet and stuff is really difficult, which I apologise for, but it's life. So
Yeah, at the moment it's a bit difficult, and we explained this a little bit last week. You know, with my situation, as I've said before, it's a lot to do 2 podcasts. Not that I don't like the podcast, but it's a lot to do 2 every week, and I just don't have the time to do 2 a week, especially with 2 new projects started already. One that doesn't end until 2025, so it's a bit crazy, but that's how things work. Marco, thank you.
Thank you. It was fun.
Steve.
It was good. Good to get Steve back on.
It was good. Steve,
Yeah.
thanks, mate.
no worries, man. Take care. Have a good week.
You too. See you guys. All right, everyone.
See ya.
See you, Marco. That's Marco and Steve coming in from Sydney. I'm going to remind the listeners, Steve has a 997 GT3 Carrara white. Marco has a 996 Turbo Speed yellow. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to the PorscheCooled podcast. Bye for now.